Welcome to the NooK on the Voluntary Virtues Network. I'm Steve. I'm here today with Britt and
Kev
G, Mike,
Yo,
and John. I don't know why I always have problems with people's names on here. I have problems with people's names anyway, but
Right.
Blame it on the cigar.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
With
Yeah.
your own name, right?
yeah.
My name is
Slim Shady.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say
Starts with an S.
starts with an S.
So, Mike, what are you drinking today?
It's a little gem, NooK Brewing Company
Yeah.
from Eugene, Oregon. Vanilla Otis. It's an oatmeal
Nice.
stout with vanilla. I'm a big fan of an oatmeal stout. Any day of the week can give me an oatmeal stout and be like, thank you for breakfast. And that will be like a large part of my my calories for the day. But yeah, so this is NooK. It's got vanilla in it, and it's wonderful, and I can't say a damn thing about it.
That's such a cool name. Every once in a while, NooK makes its presence again here on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And I always think
Or whatever
that,
night we do
that's
these.
a cool night.
Not
right?
necessarily
I mean, a cool
that we
name.
film it on Wednesday or Tuesday or any other day of the week.
You know what it means?
It wasn't it? No,
It's-
you said it last time,
It's
but
Sumerian.
that's
Really?
Yeah, I was thinking
it was
alien,
the
but yeah.
Sumerian god of beer. Goddess.
Well, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense now.
When I was thinking up a name for my brewery, I thought I found NooK, and I was like, oh wait, there's already one that. Damn.
So hops. I wonder what they made it with back then. What did
They didn't. I don't think they used hops.
No.
They used
Wheat.
other things though. Well, they still use barley, I think,
Oh, yeah.
but they didn't use hops.
Well,
Hops was a later addition. They used other kind of herbs and stuff to bitter it.
theory goes is that beer was, well, they left the barley out to dry, and it got wet, and they dried it up in a basket, and they noticed it was bubbling, and they're like, well, what the hell is this about? And they're like, oh, this tastes different. Well, let's see what we can do with this different taste, and there you go, beer.
Well, that's what they think might.
Yeah,
have
exactly.
happened.
So the theory goes. So, like, who knows? Could have been aliens. I just don't have my hair done right. Could have been aliens.
Not saying it's aliens.
I'm not saying
but
it's-
it's aliens.
What
It's
is
aliens.
aliens?
The original. What was the nectar of the gods?
Ambrosia.
Ambrosia. Yes. The
Currently
original
made with
ambrosia.
tangerines and marshmallows, which is amazing, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not a drink though.
That's not a drink.
That's.
Why not?
No, it was the gods had ambrosia and nectar. The drink was nectar, the food was ambrosia. So,
Mm.
There you go.
very high blood sugar, tangerines and marshmallows.
So anyway,
Right. Topic, we have
Moving
one.
on.
Yes, we do.
we do actually have one this week. Some weeks we don't. This week we do.
Until we do. Until we do, right? Oh.
You have no idea how much we wing this before this camera comes on. Yeah. Okay, all right. That being said,
Sometimes we actually research the topic and all that.
it's happened. Yeah, it's happened.
So, the narrative.
The narrative of
What?
the media, right?
What
the
does
power of narratives and how the media and
The lone
government
wolf.
and education feeds into it.
The
and-
lone wolf gunman, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's just the power of the narrative and how it's fostered by media, education, government, and people's, I guess, just the power of numbers, just feeding into narratives that typically are false.
So what do you mean power of numbers?
When just perception is reality, and when you have a lot of people perceiving an event or a person a certain way,
Or their perception steered to a
right,
consensus.
or their perception is theory, right? You just have that. You just have a whole group of people. Help me out here. I'm just.
Okay.
But they're
Well,
Yeah,
it kind
I
of
don't
increases
have-
the chances that some topic's going to be talked about around people in groups.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
you have just that swarm that you can't really get the truth out because you're
You've
trying to
created
say
a
that,
hive
hey, this
mind.
we've been misled here, but kind of get drowned out just with all the noise.
Well, I'll use a political example just because it's super easy. All right, so I'm not the biggest fan of Rand Paul myself. I think he's just kind of a schlub. Anyways, but so the
He's a
narrative.
politician.
Yeah, he's
so.
a politician.
Yeah.
Politics, and, whole hierarchy thing, government and rules and bullshit. But so the narrative is Rand Paul ain't doing good. He may drop out. He's not getting a lot of support. That's the narrative. If you were to look at the poll numbers, whether or not you believe them to be accurate or not doesn't matter. But the poll numbers will come up as like he's on par, like as of like last month or something, with like Carly Fiorina or something like that, right? So, but the narrative is Rand Paul's doing really bad. Carly Fiorina, up and comer.
Yeah.
It's just simply saying all it is that somebody just says it,
Yeah.
and if it's repeated enough, it becomes the line. It becomes the thing that everybody
Right.
else is saying because they heard it on CNN in the middle of the night, and you know.
What are you talking about, Mike? The media just reports the facts of
They just report the facts
Objectively.
Objectively,
yeah.
It's never subjective.
But they choose the facts.
Yeah.
selectively chosen facts, or they make them up.
Like what was the most recent one? Like with the hospital, right? Was that
The no spin zone. Haven't you ever heard that?
Have you heard of the no spin zone? Bill Riley would never say anything that isn't, not completely honest. Okay, yeah, so the hospital and ISIS, which that's a whole show on its own. Future
There we
show,
go.
ISIS. Okay. Anyway, so there was a hospital in Syria that was bombed.
Afghanistan?
Syria, I think. Was it? No, it was Afghanistan. You're right. Thank you.
That's right.
All right, I'm sorry, there's too many wars going on
You're
right
changing the
now.
narrative.
It's hard to remember.
Too many hospitals getting bombed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the other, too many hospitals being bombed. This
One
planet.
is too many.
Oh, this planet. All right. Anyway, so it was a hospital bombed in Afghanistan, and the U.S. they thought it was like ISIS was in there or some bullshit. I don't know. Anyway, so the narrative at the very beginning was U.S. bombs hospital, okay? And then it became, no joke, New York Times, hospital exploded, same time U.S. bombing.
What?
Yeah, like, no, seriously.
I didn't see that
Yeah,
one.
like an
no,
Onion
seriously.
headline.
That was like like after a couple days, the narrative had changed was, hospital exploded during U.S. bombing.
Hospital
What?
harms U.S. bomb.
Well, the thing I find interesting about this case, though, is that normally they're like, oh, well, they were storing weapons there, or there was a terrorist there, so that justifies us killing a whole bunch of innocent people. They're not even saying that this time. They're just giving a whole bunch of different ideas and hoping one of them will stick.
Yeah. 1943. V-2 rockets flew over London. Same time, London train tunnel collapses. It's on the same par as that. Like, it's that ridiculous if you really objectively think about it. Like, what are they saying here,
So, I think one thing I think is important to bring up is that most of the news outlets in existence today are all owned by like 3 people,
Yeah.
and
5 corporations, something like that.
and
yeah.
most of their news comes from a single source, the AP.
Mhm.
So
AP Newswire.
essentially,
Well,
the-
Reuters too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, Reuters is
there's
up there.
there's a couple different. So you've got like your AP, you've got Reuters, and then another one. It'll come to me maybe, but I'm going to use the example of a newspaper, and like, nobody even reads a newspaper. I got that. I understand, but it shows a good point. Is that if you were to pick up, let's say, the Union Tribune in San Diego. Not saying that we're in anywhere near San Diego, but let's say we were. So if you pick up the Union Tribune, if you would look at the front page of the newspaper, almost every single column on there says, author of the column, AP Newswire, the whole fucking front page. So if it's AP Newswire and that's a major newspaper, and all the other newspapers are doing the same thing, it's the exact same story. It's just being parroted. You might have like one column where it's all like staff writer, and you're like, oh, super, like somebody actually wrote this thing, They have computer algorithms that write stories, specifically business section. is just done by computers
Oh, yeah.
because it's
That's-
like just numbers and facts and stuff. So if you ever see a weird misprint, it's probably not a misprint. That's what the algorithm said what the word was, and they just printed it. Yeah. So if you want to know how crazy it gets, that's the end of it somewhere. Yeah.
Pretty nuts.
I think I forgot what I was gonna say.
I want to go with what you were saying earlier, that they're just throwing all these stories out there and trying to see one that sticks. And I mean that's when it shows how weak their position is trying to do that. But that really is their strategy. Is they know how powerful the narrative can be, so that they're just keep making those attempts. If one fizzles out, they'll just go for the next one.
And one of the things too that's interesting about that, I'm sorry. One of the interesting things about that too is that depending on what your particular bias is, might depend on which story you believe too. So they throw out a whole bunch of different stories essentially from the same source, or different explanations of a story, so that you grab everyone across the nation. So you talk to one person and they believe this one story because that's what they read, and that's what their bias led them to believe. And then you talk to somebody else and they believe something different about essentially the same story, and essentially leads them to a similar conclusion, but because of their bias, they tend to believe this other story. So it's sometimes not so much just trying to get something to stick, but they're trying to appeal to a broader variety of biases.
Yeah, I think you got media selection there. If you have liberals who are going to choose a liberal news outlet, a conservative is going to go for a conservative outlet. I get my news from various libertarian and anarchist outlets. So, but I mean, I check the other ones too because I want to see where the other
How the narrative is being formed
Right, yeah.
to influence the major collective, the 50% of
yeah,
that
definitely.
vote or whatever.
Right.
So let me ask you this: how do you avoid creating a narrative? What are some things?
I always like
Well-
you always shoot straight for a solution, right?
Yeah.
I like.
Well,
always
I think a better question is is creating a narrative necessarily bad? I don't know that you can get away with creating a narrative.
It's part of it. Yeah, it's objective.
As long as your narrative is objective.
Right. You can. What the truth is.
Is that
no one
is that
objective.
creative
There is no
and
such thing as objectivity.
Right.
Right.
No, that's true.
And that's why
Not
I would
100%
advocate
objectively.
that future ethics would evolve where, let's just say, a newspaper is written and the author signs it John Chandler, anarchist, voluntarist, what I mean? So in full disclosure, that author is saying, this is what I believe in, this is the lens through which I see the world, and then that becomes the norm, and it's out in the open, right? And so, like, example, we could go to antiwar.com and get some really good stories, but the source you're getting it from, they're anti-war. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's not.
It's in the
It's
title.
not objective, right?
Yeah.
But you know what you're getting. The problem is you've got the alphabet soup on television and the corresponding rags out of the numerous cities, and they parade, as objective, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem I see. Is you can't really get rid of, subjectivity.
Well, let's say that news outlets were more objective and transparent. Isn't the choice of news, of what's being reported on, still a narrative? How do you...
Say that again.
I mean-
Oh yeah. I know. I think I know what you're saying. So, the fact that they're reporting on one story rather than another is itself building a narrative.
Yeah, what are they leaving out?
Yeah.
Like-
So
Like the fact,
omission.
like you see one story after another, terrorist this and terrorist that,
Hey, I got.
and that's all you see in the news. You're gonna think that terrorism is a huge issue, when in fact, you are magnitudes times more likely to be killed by a cop in this nation
Right.
than, or in this geopolitical location,
And I would go like, to add,
than
just
a
like,
terrorist.
the general narrative is anything and everything that poisons the worldview of humans, right? So humans are destroying the planet, they need to be regulated. Humans can't be trusted, they need to be policed. Humans can't be, it's everything gives, the only thing that a person can come with by watching the media is that humans are the problem. We aren't the solution. When in reality, we can create the world that is, beautiful.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and that kind of gets me thinking about. Okay, so narrative is global warming, everybody gonna die. We gotta regulate this, and that, and we all have to be under control or something. Okay, so I was.
That's it. Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay. So real quick, like, because it's not like a big point, it's more of a thought to ponder. So, all right, the how many times can I say "so" in an episode? Somebody's going to correct me on that and be like, "You got to knock that
Got
stuff."
about 15 more minutes, 14 more minutes. So,
Put a counter at the bottom.
Not going to say it. Anyway, the narrative is humanity, horrible, regulate, global warming, climate change, that sort of a thing. But why not, instead of saying, oh, we have to regulate everything because we're destroying the planet, why not say, okay, there's a lot of people on here, we're having a big impact on the natural resources. Why isn't the narrative, let's get off the planet, let's go colonize Mars, let's go colonize the moon? Why isn't that a narrative? Because it's not about controlling the resources or making sure the planet is healthy. It's about controlling us. That's what it's about.
Right.
And whatever narrative they can come up with, whether it be accurate or not, is they're going to use that narrative to control people. So
humans will enslave themselves.
The global warming is a good one. That's a good example because that's a very powerful and incredibly dangerous narrative that a lot of people are just they believe it so blindly. That's just a good example of what we're talking about, the power of narratives.
I was going to get what you made me think of.
yes.
So part
Damn
of, part of building a narrative, building a narrative is building the options, or is creating false dichotomies.
Mm-hmm.
We had this problem, so we can either do this or we can do this.
And there are no other options.
And there's no other options.
Yeah.
There's never a plan C.
That's what I love. Like
You can vote for a Republican or a Democrat.
That's what I loved about like watching Snowden and WikiLeaks, more so WikiLeaks. And there's been a couple of others that have been outside of the paradigm, sort of like
Vice, like investigative journalism that comes from Vice. I think a lot of those.
What I was talking about was like after the WikiLeaks exploded onto the scene, there was this quiet time that the left and the right was like formulating their battle plan. You know what I mean? How are we going to treat this one? You know what I mean? How?
They would just put the raw.
Right. So there's like this couple of weeks, they're like, oh wow, it's remarkably quiet.
The funniest thing is
that
there was actually a group in the Department of Defense which created a report on how to take down WikiLeaks, which was then leaked by WikiLeaks.
That's good. Perfect. Wonderful. Beautiful. That's how you do it right there.
But that was your point, John, that there's a different type of news that's more about just giving information and then people decide how to interpret it?
No, I think I honestly, I think most of it's all charades and canned anyway, but there are some unplanned, unforeseen events that come about, and I think maybe WikiLeaks could have been something like that. And there's this period that the orchestrators have to kind of figure out how they're going to incorporate this into the new narrative. You know what I mean, right? So it's like...
And I think that's WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden both. There was kind of that vacuum where they didn't have a narrative, ready or crafted enough. So you have alternative media creating narratives, building their own narratives. Not that narratives are bad. I don't think we need to stop creating narratives.
Right.
I think it's just storytelling is a part of how humans understand the world we live in. So, but yeah, alternative media, they created their stories, and those became more popular narratives than what the government and the media eventually fed to us.
Right.
It was interesting you brought up Snowden, because it took them a good 3 or 4 weeks to start calling him a traitor. You know,
Right.
because they didn't know, they didn't know how to because you see, if the story came out and they said traitor, everybody would be like fascists, but they had to sneak it in there as oh, okay, well, what did he do with this information? Where's he going? And the minute he went to Russia, they're like traitor.
Yeah.
Remember the Cold War, huh?
Yeah.
Commies, right? Traitor. So yeah, there
Been working
was.
for Russia this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. That was the other
Heard
thing.
that
Oh, he
part.
was working for Russia the whole
Yeah.
time. Yeah, exactly.
What's great about that too is Russia is like we're not dealing with him at all. We're not even talking to him.
Yeah.
And so they had to adjust to that. But I still talk to people who are like, oh yeah, he was a traitor. He gave information to our enemies. Like, no, he gave information to us. So if you're he gave it to people. He put it out for everybody. So by the government calling him a traitor, that's saying that we are the enemies, which I thought was a good way of twisting that around.
And it does show a little bit of a
Twisting the narrative.
It shows
Turning the narrative against him.
It shows a little bit of a change in culture too. Somebody will say it if I mention it, and I can't remember the guy's name. And terrible, but Pentagon Papers. What was his-
Ellsberg.
Ellsberg, Danny Ellsberg.
Yep.
Thank you.
Danny?
Yeah.
Sounds like he's your friend.
Yeah, well, Danny Ellsberg. Because I met the guy, right? No, that was
We had lunch last week.
yeah.
So you're a traitor too, call him Danny, huh? He's your buddy, huh?
Straighten my tie. When that came out, talk about a difference in culture. Your general person you talked to on the street thought he was a damn hero. And Edward Snow came out, and it's more or less you still talk to people like, oh, he's a traitor, and you're like, whoa, so he told you that the whole government, or not the whole government, but a very large chunk of the government's enforcement ability, or whatever you talk about, is just spying on your average Joe who's going to buy, well, a 6-pack of whatever, what is he doing on Facebook? That's being recorded. What is he doing here? What is he buying? That's being recorded. It's all being put into a giant server in the middle of Utah. And traitor? Really? That. You talk about how the narrative is being formed. Whoa, okay, so
Let's go a little bit more recent. There's a
Okay.
war on cops.
there's a war on cops. Because
Cops,
why?
the police have become more militarized. The cops are killing more people. They are assaulting more people. They're killing they're killing people's dogs.
At the drop of a hat, really, when it
Yeah.
comes to
Are they really killing more people, or is it just being seen more now with the GoPro cams?
No, look at the statistics.
Yeah,
they're killing more people.
Yes,
Yeah, there's no doubt.
yeah.
There's,
It's
it's a
unfortunately.
40-year high this last year. Over the last year, there's a 40-year high for cops killing people. Cop deaths, 40-year low. But there's a war on cops.
Meanwhile, cops solve homicides at about a 60% rate now. It used to be 90%.
Don't say that out loud. People get scared.
But I'm just thinking, if that's one of their duties, and
10-year
yet
backlog
a murderer
on
has
rape
2 in 5
cases.
chance to get away with murder. That's but
I'm surprised it was 90.
well, that was good 40, 50 years ago, something like that. But
Yeah, 60 sounds high. But it's all about spinning the information to get to tell people what you want them to hear and
Yes.
what you want them to believe.
Do you think this is a conscious effort or more of just a human tendency to...
No, I think it's a conscious effort. You can cite references too.
There's a really
Norman Dodd interview. He speaks about he was the chairman of the Reese Commission, which was an investigation into nonprofit organizations in communism back 1953-54. But he was a financial wizard before the the Great Depression, and he was brought on to investigate why. And he said basically unsound banking practices, and ultimately in his investigation, he uncovered how it goes back to J.P. Morgan and a bunch of others buying the 25, talk about this, a narrative, buying the top 25 papers in the country back in like 1908, 1910, somewhere around there, with the intent to steer the perception of the public with a more favorable light towards war and through foreign interventions.
Wow.
Because they deemed that the easiest way to steer a society in the direction you want to is through war, but they have to change the perception of war. And it goes deeper. It goes to the American Historical Society, which then was Mary, and I can't remember his name, but Byrd was a husband and wife team, and they were the top dogs in the American Historical Society. And Morgan and Company approached them and said, "Would you consider writing history, American history, in a more favorable light to foreign interventionism to build this great society that they were painting as what the future would look like?" And the Byrd said flatly no. And ultimately what they did is they went and found 17 scholars and funded their Oxford education, and those 17 people would go on to become the American Historical Society.
Oh, wow.
So American history has been corrupted back around 1918, 1920. That's by the time those guys got in, So the point being is that there was intent to color the way American history is taught in school, to give the students a more favorable view towards foreign interventions and war for the purpose of building a great society. Ultimately, to carry it forward to the LBJ, the Great Society. This is all born from that line of thinking, anyway. But yeah, it's Norman Dodds. A great interview if you want to check that out.
I don't know.
That's where it. They use the power of the media. They use the power of academia and education to force these narratives that don't serve us.
Right.
So.
I don't know if you've ever seen the show Bullshit, Penn and Teller's Bullshit.
Yep.
Great show.
It's no longer on the air, but it was a great show. Couple of the episodes were not great, but most of them were really great. And he did an episode one time on statistics. And he had this guy on, I forget his name now, but he's still doing statistics. And he said straight out on camera that what he'll do is the network will tell him how they want the statistics to turn out.
Oh, it's
and
Frank Luntz, right?
Frank
Yeah,
Luntz.
yeah.
Got to meet that guy.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
These guys got a really slimy hand.
Fitting. Right.
But he would take however he wanted the statistics to turn out. That's how he would frame the question. And they even did on the episode that they did. They took a given question and he asked people 2 questions back to back, which essentially asked the same question and got 2 completely different answers. Just on how he worded the questions. And he asked them back to back.
How did he admit that, though? And how's that not more of a scandal? He's saying that I've manipulated
he's still on Fox News to this day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was just thinking maybe an example of how you could skew an answer. Okay, you could ask the question, is the sky blue? Right? Easy answer.
So,
Wait. Alternative, you could ask the question, is the sky a different color than blue? Could it be that you might get a couple people like, well, okay, it's a turquoise. It's a little bit more of a, kind of more of a cyan. You see what I'm saying? Like, you just rewording things a little bit can kind of, get a different reaction out of it.
And then if you asked a robot.
Well,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We were just talking about earlier how there's a new AI system that they said had an IQ of about a 4-year-old. So, if you say
Wait till it turns 18.
terrible. Okay, so if you had a robot that was an android that could,
and it was
necessarily
only 4.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Would it be, would it
Whoa!
be Penn Teller?
Whoa!
That's a valid
Alright.
question.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you're in. Well, I mean,
So,
Would you have to wait for the robot to turn 18 or get, like right off the assembly line?
this episode went really fast.
well, you want
Guys,
Yeah.
we're out of time.
amazing ending next week.
Have a good one.